Welcome to another issue of Transparency in Government. We're glad to have you join us for this program where we try to make sure that whatever you want to know about your town government, you can find it out and find it out easily. So to that end, excuse me, we have our town manager, Kevin Smith, who's with us again today. And Kevin, welcome.
Dottie,
glad
thanks.
to see you again.
Thanks for having me
Yeah,
back.
let's talk a little bit about what's been going on for the last few weeks
Sure.
since we were together.
Where would you like to start?
Well, let's go with the emotional issues.
All right.
Dogs. Let's talk about dogs.
So you're very much correct. This has been an issue that a lot of people have been weighing in on.
Mm-hmm.
And to give some history on it,
Right,
at the risk of
right, it's
sounding
come up,
like
yeah.
we're barking up the wrong tree,
Oh.
Dottie.
Here he goes.
I got a lot of those in my back pocket, by the way.
Okay.
What really precipitated this coming forward is we had a resident in town who was very upset that people were taking their dogs to the cemetery and allowing them to do their business in the cemetery.
Did they clean up?
No.
Evidently not.
No.
Yeah.
Which is, I think most people would find to be pretty unreasonable.
Absolutely.
And disrespectful. So they came and said, is there some kind of a town law, an ordinance which prevents this sort of thing from happening? More than that, they wanted to see dogs just not allowed in cemeteries. And if you look at what the cemetery regulations are in other towns in the area, some do ban dogs entirely from cemeteries, and some don't. We do have a no fouling law that's on the books.
And that doesn't mean no birds.
What's that?
And that doesn't mean no birds.
Birds, I believe, are currently included in
the no fouling?
In the no, well, they are included in the current law.
I had to give you back one.
Yes, well, so, and that may be changed going forward. Nonetheless, so this complaint grew into a larger discussion about dogs not being on leashes in town. We do have a leash law in town currently. There's been some...
I thought that we did.
Well, we do, and there's been some discussion about how much it's being enforced. We do have an animal control officer who only works 16 hours a week, though,
Right.
Whose hours were cut back during the recession period, and they were never restored. So our animal control officer is part-time at most. And so, because there are other people who, after this, complain about the cemetery, said, well, I'm walking the rail trail, I'm walking the Musquash, and I see dogs doing their business all along those areas too. Or I'm walking on the trail and a dog comes up and jumps on me. So, the part of the unfortunate thing here is that where in some cases regulating what should be common courtesy and common respect.
Right.
If you're in an area where there's other people around, you should have your dog on a leash. At the very least, it should be under a command or voice control.
Right.
And I've never met a dog owner who thinks they're an irresponsible dog owner. Most dog owners, at least all the ones I've met, will tell you I'm a very responsible dog owner. But we've all seen a scenario and a situation where a dog goes running for someone and the person calls it and it doesn't
come back.
It doesn't come back.
Yeah.
So, I think while most dog owners would like to believe their dogs are under the voice control and command, the reality is sometimes they're not.
And you don't know every situation they're going to come into
You don't.
that might.
You don't.
Yeah.
But, at the same time, you want to allow some freedom and flexibility of people when they've got their, they're walking their dogs in a particular area, to be able to do so, not necessarily having them on a leash at all times. So whenever you're enacting an ordinance, you try to strike a balance between, the rights of all groups.
Right.
And certainly you have dog owners here who believe they have certain rights, and you have people who, non-dog owners or people who may own dogs, but don't bring them out walking, who believe they have the right to not be disturbed, whether it's stepping in a dog's business or having them run after them while they're on the trails. So that's kind of what this is all about,
Okay.
and what the discussion and public hearing was about that we had
So
recently.
how far do you see the town council going with this? I mean, will there be that person who says their dog is under voice control, and then if it happens that the dog does not obey the control, they get reported?
Well,
Or-
and I think
how's this
that's
gonna
what you're
happen?
going to see happen. I
Okay.
think you're going to see a hybrid of all of the comments that were made
Mm-hmm.
at that meeting. I don't think the council will go as far as to say every dog has to be on a leash at all times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But they will probably say at the very least they have to be under voice control.
Mm-hmm.
And if a dog is not on a leash, is supposedly under voice control, but
Yeah.
is not
Responding.
not responding and goes after someone else, well, then there'll be enforcement action taken. But of course, enforcement action can only be taken if either A, the police are around to actually witness the event, or B, a person calls the police and
Right.
tells them
Yeah.
about it and lets them know what occurred. Many times people just won't call the police.
By the time they get home, they're not quite so mad.
Yeah, and they won't call the police about a matter. But
Yeah.
again, things can only be enforced if the police know about it. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why we always encourage people to call the police if they're having an issue or problem with something in town, whether it's dogs or anything else, to call the police and let them know about it so that the town laws can be enforced.
Well, I know that I'm thinking it has to be like 30 years ago. You might know the date when they first passed a leash law or some nature in Londonderry.
Yeah.
And we had dogs running in packs.
Yeah,
And I had even complained a few times. My daughter was like 2, 3 years old at the time. And if she went out in the yard, they didn't hurt her, but they would get excited to see a baby and they'd jump her,
sure,
scare her.
sure.
But once that law was put into action and people were aware of it, the dog packs stopped running.
Yeah.
So there's still a loose
Well,
dog
and
here
that's-
and there,
right.
but the packs don't seem to be there as badly as they were before.
Well, and that's the second part of it is what are the things we can do besides, tweaking the ordinance a little bit, the current town law on it, to make people more aware and hopefully be more responsible, such as putting signage around town,
Yeah.
especially at the cemeteries. I don't know what the council is going to do with regard to dogs in cemeteries. That's something that will be debated at the next public hearing on
Yeah.
this matter. But that's going to be something they're going to have to decide on. But signage will help. We've talked about when every year we mail out notices to dog owners to have their dogs licensed,
Perfect.
putting a notice in there
That's perfect.
to say, here are the town laws on dogs, and they need to be followed. The other thing we talked about is having kind of the dispensaries
Yes.
with the bags
Especially on the trails.
on the trails, so that people will have the bags available
Yep.
and they'll be encouraged to pick up, scoop
Anything
the
else
poop,
they see, yeah.
along the way as they're walking. So, those are the kind of things I think we can do to draw attention to it, make people aware of the situation.
Right.
And again, just reminding people to be courteous and be respectful. Dottie, I personally witnessed, not that long ago, I was walking one of the trails at lunchtime behind the rec fields, and a gentleman was walking his 2 dogs, both under voice control. One of them listened, one of them didn't, and it beelined it for me. Now, I'm not afraid of dogs. But the bigger issue was that, so then it stayed with me. It wasn't going back to its owner.
You had a dog.
I was trying to just ignore him so that he wouldn't stay with me. But the
Yeah.
bigger problem ended up being when I came out of the trail, that dog then beelined it for the playground area and proceeded to go and jump on, a 4-year-old
Kids, yeah.
girl that was at the playground. That kind of stuff shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
Again, a dog owner should be aware of the surroundings, know where they're going, and say, maybe I got to err on the side of caution and have the dog on a leash
Yeah.
if I know there's a playground nearby
Yeah.
and there could be kids on it.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of thing we're talking
Yeah.
about, just being respectful and being aware too of what the town laws say.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I think that people have to do that. It affects others who would never think of putting anybody in harm's way or
Right.
even to be just frightened, not really harmed. Most of us with dogs, I think, would not do that. And I do think
Right.
that most of us do pick up behind our dogs.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and again, I think most people, dog owners, do that.
yeah.
But there are some who don't, and I don't, I don't think they're purposely being negligent, but at the
Maybe
same time,
thoughtless.
at the same time, I think they've got to be more aware of, okay, where am I? What are the surroundings? How many people are typically over here? And and take precautions when.
Yeah, and there are, when you train a dog to voice command, I mean, you set up situations where they're enticed to go elsewhere, but they still mind you.
Right.
So they maybe
Right.
need a little more training themselves.
Yeah,
We should bring
and
some training over here.
That could be it.
We need a
you
training
know?
class,
You may need to put that down, Dottie.
dog training. Okay. And what will be the consequences if people are reported?
The consequence will be a violation fine.
Okay.
It'll be a fine, and they'll get a violation. A violation is not it's not a criminal citation, but it's like a speeding ticket. You know, a speeding ticket's a violation. So it'll be a violation fine.
Okay.
It hasn't been determined yet. The state RSA has certain fines.
Oh, okay.
So because there's a state law on this as well. So some fines are
Can't be
defined.
in conflict with that.
Can't be in conflict with that. So some of the fines are defined by the state RSAs, but then the town ordinance will have its own fines
Okay.
as well. And, they're not hefty fines, but it's, kind of a slap on the wrist to say,
Wake up.
be more courteous, be more respectful when
Yeah.
you're out in public with your dog,
Well, I would be remiss if I did not bring up another subject right now, and you know what it is. Some of these dogs could be playing in a dog
park. Absolutely, Dottie. And I'm glad you brought that up because that came up during the discussion as well. Interestingly, and this is something that I think this is maybe for another show to talk
Yeah, oh,
about,
yeah.
but it was interesting because, and I don't know if you had a chance to see the discussion from the
I
town
have
council
not. I will
meeting.
go back and look at that.
There were a number of dog owners there who spoke negatively and against the dog parks.
Really?
Saying that they're not good for dogs. So there seems to be a debate within the dog owning community of whether or not dog
Yeah.
parks.
And there are pros and cons to everything.
Yeah. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I wasn't necessarily expecting that during this conversation, but the biggest part right now of getting the dog park off the ground has been just finding
The space.
the appropriate
place,
space
yeah.
for it. And that's been harder to come by than I think we thought it was going to be. Nonetheless, I've charged the planning department again with looking at trying to find an area where we could potentially have a dog park in town,
Yeah.
and have a space for dogs to go and run around.
Yeah. Yeah, they do need it. The dogs. They need to socialize. It's one of the things that'll make them better behaved out on the trails with other dogs, even on a leash. So socialization is important. The exercise part is important. If you go, I think what happened when we first enacted a leash law here in the community was that people went more towards keeping their dogs in their own yards.
Yeah.
Okay, they weren't necessarily leashed all the time, but
Yep.
they would stay in their own yards. And we need a place for them to socialize. It's also, one little plug here, in our research on the dog park, we went around to other parks, and it turns out that it really is a very good socialization place for the people in town. Okay, there were a lot of seniors out there
Yep.
at the dog parks that we went to. Most of those had like 50-50, big dogs on this side, little dogs on that side.
Yeah.
And the people were, just happy to have that time to socialize. They already know they have something in common.
Yeah.
They like dogs.
Right.
So I think that's one more point
Yeah.
where we can give people that opportunity. So I won't push that anymore. You're working on it. I will be looking for updates as we go along anyway.
Sure.
But it does get emotional. And I think that for anything that has to do with the animals and safety and that type of thing, people need to try really hard to take a step back and go, okay, well, take my dog out of the equation. If I was just looking at somebody else's dog, what would I be thinking?
Right.
Because then you can get some of that emotion out of there.
Right.
And think about just the safety and comfort of the community.
Well, and it always amazes me too, Dottie, since I've been town manager, of the kinds of issues that bring people out. You know,
Yeah.
we joke about it afterwards, but there's truth to it that, you know, we pass and debate a $30 million budget. 2 people show up,
5
it takes
minutes.
5 minutes, and
Yeah.
we're done with it. You talk
Yeah.
about enforcing a leash law in town, and half the town
Fill
shows
right up,
up,
yeah.
and it's a 2.5-hour discussion.
Yeah.
So it's you know, and that's the nature of local government, and it's very personal and very close to the people. But it's, you know, it's always interesting that for some reason on the local level, money issues never, you know, in fact, right prior to this discussion, we had a public discussion about purchasing vehicles for the fire
You were
department.
going to talk about that, yes.
And
Nice segue.
yeah, wasn't that? So, because I know that was on your
Yeah.
list as well. The fire chief did a very, I think, a very good job in meeting the needs of the community as efficiently as possible with the money available. And what I mean by that is we're basically going to be getting 3 new vehicles for the price of 1.
Wow.
In that we're going to be getting we have a ladder truck right now that we were going to be turning in.
How many stories will that do?
Well, the current ladder truck, well, Al behind the curtain would
Yeah,
know better
that's
than
true.
I how many stories it does, but right now it can reach our tallest buildings that we have in town.
Yeah.
And we're on the verge of having to replace it, but instead what we're able to do is refurbish that ladder truck, purchase a smaller ladder for you know, in anticipation of things like Woodmont coming
More
online
residential and things.
and some of the new apartment buildings. It's a smaller ladder,
Yeah.
but will service areas in town that are going to be needing service, and purchase the long anticipated tanker truck,
Oh.
which will hold up to 2,500 gallons of water, something we don't have right now, that
yeah.
the community for a long time has said we
We
really
need
need
it.
a tanker truck
Yeah.
because we don't have hydrants everywhere in town.
Yeah.
Doing all of these things, refurbishing the smaller ladder and the tanker for $1.2 million, which would have been the cost of just one new ladder truck, the
1.2
replacing
million.
ladder truck that we have.
Yeah.
So it's a great deal for the town.
The good thing is they last a while.
They do. They do last a while. And so we talked about this in public. Any questions?
Nope.
No questions at all. You know, and maybe that means people are happy with the way
Trust
we're
you the way
managing
they're
the
doing
money,
it, yeah.
and they're you know, they're glad that, you know, we're looking out for, I think, for the best interest of the taxpayers
Right.
and trying to get the best deal that we can. Nonetheless, you know, 1.2 million is a lot of money. The other thing we're doing now too, that we've kind of changed the way we've purchased these vehicles. In the past, what we used to do is we had a capital reserve fund,
Right.
and would put money in it every year until it came time to purchase. We had a schedule of, you know, okay, we were going to purchase this vehicle in this
Yeah.
year, this one in this year, and
Yeah.
so you put the money in it every year to get to that point where you're purchasing that vehicle. You're not mandated to put that money in though. So sometimes you'd get behind schedule if the you know, right amount of money wasn't put into
Right.
the fund.
Yeah.
We're now leasing most of these vehicles now. And by leasing, I mean we're basically on, rather than purchasing it all in, you know, one fell swoop,
Right.
we're doing it over a number of years, but still holding on to that vehicle when the
Lease is up?
lease is up,
Okay.
and holding it onto it for as many years as we can.
Okay.
By doing that, it lessens the burden of having to do that huge payment all in that
Yeah.
first year. What it does mean, though, is that because we're leasing them now, we're obligated to make that payment every year. So we have to have that budgeted into our budget.
Right.
But frankly, it's something we should have been doing anyway to keep up with the schedule for how we're
Right.
purchasing
Makes
our
sense, yeah.
vehicles.
Yeah.
We do that with all the police cruisers now. And in fact, people may have seen, you know, the lease on the old cruisers was up. So we've replaced them now with the new cruisers, because in that case, we don't just buy them outright.
Right.
We go into a new lease. Our lease payments have actually gone down with
Okay.
these new cruisers. So the old cruisers, even though they were older and their lease payment was up, with the new ones, now the lease payment is gone down. Town of Londonderry
great.
has been wonderful to work with on us on that. And again,
Fantastic.
where we've done our due diligence in making sure the town is getting the best bang for its buck.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
Okay.
so,
So it's a lot of money, but there's a lot of ways to pay for it.
yes.
Okay. I know another thing that's kind of an emotional issue, will become one if it's not already in Londonderry, is the PFOAs in the water. Can you
Right.
tell? I don't even know what PFOA stands for. What is that?
Well, it's a carcinogen that's produced. It's an airborne carcinogen that is produced from plastics being
Okay.
manufactured. This all resulted from the St. Gobain's plant in Merrimack. And so when I say it's airborne, so it
Yeah.
comes out of the smokestacks and it's carried by the wind. It's primarily was initially a Merrimack, Litchfield, Bedford problem. And so the state environmental services tested a mile radius around the plant to look at whether or not this has gotten into the groundwater. They recently extended, now that first mile radius did not include Londonderry. They recently extended it out 1.5 miles to be on the safe side, to be very precautious, to do the well sampling
Okay,
of the
yeah.
groundwater 1.5 miles out from the plant. That now does include a small portion of Londonderry, mostly along Litchfield Road. I think we're looking at 7 private wells in that area. So it's not a huge part, but it is a small segment of the town. The good news is that so far all of the tests that have come back closest to the Londonderry line have all shown very low levels of PFOA. And by the way, almost all water samples, bottled water, the cleanest groundwater, filtered
Yeah.
water, they're all going to show some level of PFOA. The EPA has not given guidelines yet.
Oh, so they haven't even established a.
No.
Okay.
And, right now PFOA has been linked to health problems, but the EPA is still coming up with their guidelines on it. And the states have all adopted different guidelines. For instance, New Hampshire has said anything over 100 parts per trillion,
Per trillion.
yes,
Okay.
that test for PFOA, they consider to be unhealthy.
Okay. I just wondered who counts those parts.
Somebody a lot smarter than you and I, Dottie.
Definitely.
Or definitely me.
Definitely. So no, they worry about it's airborne, it gets into the groundwater.
Yeah.
Is it a problem when it's in the air? Or is it not concentrated enough situation to cause harm?
When it's in the air, no. To my knowledge,
They're not concerned about that.
well, what they're concerned about is if it's in the air, it's going to settle into the ground
Right.
at some point.
So that, yeah.
Now, if you're just talking about just the air we're breathing, to my knowledge, that hasn't been an issue.
Yeah.
But the bigger issue is what happens when it settles, because the stuff doesn't stay in the air; it
Right.
settles
It's
into the
heavy.
ground. So, so as I was saying, most of the wells near Londonderry have all tested below 100. So they haven't shown the high levels of the PFOA.
Okay.
But again, they did extend it out a little bit because there were some outliers in the different areas that were testing high. Vermont, their level is 50. That's where they
That's where
set
they
their
have to-
standard,
okay.
is at 50. So,
Okay.
so it varies among the states right now. Again, the EPA will be coming out with guidelines later. But if people have any questions or concerns or thoughts at all on this, DES has a ton of information on their website.
Okay.
That's the Department of Environmental Services. People can go on to there and find all sorts of information about PFOA and whether or not they need to be, concerned.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it sounds like you're on top of it.
I think we are.
Yeah.
I think we're very much on top of it, and we're continuing to monitor. In fact, as we're taping this show today, I have a conference call later on today with DES.
Okay.
We're doing weekly conference calls with them. They're giving us constant updates, so we are staying on top of the
Well,
matter.
that's good. That's all we can ask.
Yep.
That's all we can ask. Okay, so what else are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about Beautify Londonderry.
Yeah,
It's
so
another one of those. I think it's kind of wonderful, a little strange, but you put a word out there that
Yep.
something's not going to happen, like Christmas on the Common.
right,
And as soon as you say it's not going to happen because nobody has stepped up, people step up.
right.
So,
Well, and in this case, Mike Byerly stepped up when he heard
yeah.
that Beautify was going to be going away.
and is he on?
He's on conservation.
Okay, I thought
Yeah.
he was. Yeah.
It's a great committee, you know,
Yeah.
and it's volunteers who want to help clean up the litter around town.
Yeah. And they basically only come together in the spring, don't they?
In the springtime,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Other certain occasions they'll get together, but if people want to volunteer to help out clean up the town and the litter around town, go onto the town website, londonderrynh.org, and click on Beautify Londonderry. Just
It's
if you
right
go
on
to
that front page.
boards and commissions, go under B, find Beautify Londonderry.
Yeah.
All the contact information is on there. They have a bunch of cleanup dates that
Good,
they're going to be
good.
doing for the next few weekends. You know, sign up if you want to sign up and be a volunteer for that. I know they'd really appreciate it, and helps beautify the town. You know, it takes a team effort, and one of the way we keep taxes low is by
Volunteers.
having volunteers.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm a big believer in that. You don't need a professional paid person to do everything.
That's true.
There's a lot that can be done and accomplished
Yeah.
by volunteers. We rely on them heavily, and so the extent that people can help out, it's greatly appreciated.
And going to that, the homepage for londonderrynh.org is, if you haven't been there in a while, go back, because it's just getting more and more structured and easy to navigate than it was before. So
Yeah.
there are lots of opportunities to get onto committees, boards, commissions, whatever's going on.
Right.
They'll let you know on that front page there. You can click and find out
Yep.
what's needed.
Absolutely.
And step up. Step up. So, okay. Do they have the first weekend set? Have they already started? Or
I believe they've got one set for tomorrow, April 23rd.
okay.
I don't know when this is going to air, but if people miss this
Yeah.
weekend, I think they've got a few more
All
weekends
weekends.
after
Yeah,
that.
yeah. There's several. I
Yep.
forget how many they have,
Right.
but yeah. Okay. Now the other thing that we want to talk about today is the 24-hour
Drop off.
Drop off.
Yeah, the drug
drug
take back.
drop-off. Take back. Yes.
Yeah. So this is not contraband take back, though, and I know you're laughing about it.
No, but it.
There is consideration, Dottie,
be.
of accommodating that in the future. You know,
Yeah.
if
Well, I know they have in other places.
Right.
That's why I laughed, because
Yeah.
they do that in other places.
Right.
Just
Right.
not sure how many people are going to give up their contraband, but
well, and
Yeah.
and right, but if they feel like they can do it anonymously,
They very well might.
that's not a bad idea. So it's something that we're exploring and you know, looking at implementing for the future. But
Yeah.
right now, what we're talking about are prescription drugs, unused. You know, over
and I
the
think people, just in general, I don't think people realize that when they dispose of their drugs by like dumping them in the toilet or something, now that's going out into
right.
the groundwater at some point. It doesn't necessarily get filtered out.
Yeah,
So it'd be
it's-
pretty weak, but it's not going to get
Right.
filtered out.
It's easier. It's better for the environment if people will dispose of their old drugs that they have
Right.
at home. A lot of times they don't know how to, you know, get rid of it. So that's why we have this
Yeah.
drug take back,
Yeah.
which a lot of police departments have now done. It's located right inside the lobby of the police station.
Just kind of walk in like this and throw it in.
Well, no, it is required to have a camera on
Oh,
it,
okay.
and that is notified there. So you can try to, but there's no reason.
No,
I mean,
there's no
it's you
reason,
know,
yeah.
it's a good thing to
Yeah.
have, and you know, so we put a press release out on it. So if people have some, you know, expired drugs that are hanging around their home and want to drop them off, they go right to the police department and do that now.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
I think that's something else that we're going to do later on, is we're going to be doing some discussions on One Voice at a Time about the opioid problem, and specifically how is it impacting us here.
Right.
We know nationally, we know what's going on because we see the news, but
Yeah.
what's going on here?
Right.
So, okay, so we are doing now I can't see. Okay, here it is. We have talked about Woodmont. Let's
Woodmont.
get an update on Woodmont.
Yeah, so as
That's a good
people
one,
may have seen, the old Market Basket building is coming down, the liquor store is coming down, and Annie's, and
Gone.
they're moving over
Yeah.
to the other side. We've had a lot of positive comments back about the look of the extension onto Market Basket, of those new stores. Architecturally, they're very pleasing to the eye, and because people don't want just strip
No,
malls
no.
that look
It makes
very
a big
linear.
difference when you're riding down the road.
Yeah. So, but we've heard a lot of positive comments about that. The next big step will be the first phase of the new downtown. I can tell you that I very recently, as of this week, met with the developers of Woodmont, and they are moving fast and furious forward to submit something formally to the planning board in June, hopefully.
Okay.
And are looking to hopefully have a approval on that first phase in September, so they can start construction this fall on it.
Wow.
And I did get a sneak peek of what the new downtown first phase will look like. It was a 3D, overview, and it's very, very nice. I
Okay.
think it's something the public will be very.
Looks New England.
It does.
Good.
Oh yeah,
Good.
it definitely has has the old downtown charm to
Yeah,
it that
yeah.
you see in a lot of New England communities.
But
But
you have so many of those communities that are reviving Main Street,
Right.
this Main Street program. So
it's a lot newer.
Yeah.
It's not going to look like downtown Portsmouth per se because that
yeah.
was built so long ago, but it's got that feel.
That's-
So I think people will be very excited about it when they see it. And I get asked all the time, is it happening? Is it happening? From everything I've seen thus far and from my discussions with the developers there, it certainly looks like things are going forward with it.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good.
Yeah.
We'll keep updating people on
We will.
what's going on there.
Sure.
And if you have questions, let us know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Contact information is at the end of the show. Okay, we've got a new recycling
We do.
plan.
Yep. So people have probably seen a lot about it. Just a reminder that starting July 1st, we're going to be going to a new recycling program. Out with the old bins, in with the new.
Okay.
They're about 5.5 times larger
Than
than
the
the
little
current
red
bins.
ones?
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's a 96-gallon recycling bin that folks will be getting. It'll be a
Okay.
blue bin. And
Where are the purple bins?
What's that? I'm sorry. No, I don't know if the purple bins weren't or weren't available, Dottie, but if people are
When
saying,
we-
well, what do we do with the red bins? You can actually throw the red bin
Into the
into
blue
the blue
bin?
bin to get rid of it and recycle it. Now we are going to bi-weekly recycling,
Okay.
and we've heard some groans about that, but we think with
It's
these
keeping track.
well, we think with these
do this
new
week.
larger bins, as I said, they're 5.5 times the size of the current red ones.
What
That
size are they in relation to the trash bins that we have now?
the trash bins, I think, are around 65 gallons.
Okay.
So they're larger
Yeah.
than the trash bins.
Okay.
And if people want an extra bin, they can purchase it for a one-time fee of, I think, $50. Or if they're a family of 6 or more, they'll get one automatically.
Okay.
So, for people that do a ton of recycling, there's options there. And, the other towns that have gone to this method that are doing it bi-weekly and have the larger bins, it's worked out very well there, all the feedback we've gotten. And the big thing is by going to bi-weekly, it saves the town $1 million over 5 years. Again, we're trying to be
That
good.
pays for that truck.
Pays for that truck, yeah. We're trying to be good fiduciary agents of the taxpayers' dollars, and we feel like this was a good way to go with it.
Yeah, it does sound like a good way. And I think people, if they have more room, you will see the recycling going up too. Because it does, I know my recycling is always at least 5 times more than my regular trash.
Yeah.
Okay, now the big one, senior center. We're going to get the addition. It passed at,
Yep.
at the meeting, at the polls.
It did, and so we're already looking at bids, for the construction of it. it's even though it passed at the polls, the new fiscal year doesn't start till July 1,
Right.
so we can't start spending the money until the new fiscal year begins. But right after July 1, you'll start to see construction on that new facility, and it's going to be pretty spectacular for our seniors when it's done. It's been a long time coming, and you know, the kind of the, I like to say the good thing here about whether it's that or the, you know, that was in the capital improvement plan, and now we're doing that. The town garage, new town garage, was in the capital improvement plan, and where that's already complete. We did that a number of years ago, but we did both these projects without having to impact the town tax rate, because we took the money out of the undesignated fund balance, which has been gradually growing now the last few years. And so there isn't a sticker shock when you know, the taxpayers go to vote on these things and see that it actually won't have a tax impact. Now, the undesignated fund balance, what that simply is that's the excess revenues that came in over from where we projected the prior fiscal year, and it's also the amount of money we didn't spend on the appropriation side. So at least on the appropriation part, you know, that's money the taxpayers have already paid for. So while the undesignated fund balance, it's made up of revenues that came in more, but appropriations that weren't spent. So this is more or less, it's giving the money back to the taxpayers, because we're saying,
not impacting them again.
Well, exactly. Why are we going to charge you again to pay for the senior center when you've essentially already paid for it? You know, because of the either higher revenues or under expenditures. And we're always going to have under expenditures, Dottie. We can't legally spend more than what was appropriated. So anytime someone says, oh, well, how come we always spend less in the budget than what? Well, we have to. And you know, that's the nature of the budget process, the nature of the state law. But we're always going to end up turning back some amount of money. Some years it's higher than others. But that's kind of the nature of the beast.
That's a good thing.
But at least we're using that money for projects going forward, rather than hitting the taxpayer again.
That whole senior center thing makes me feel really old. I started going there in the 60s.
As a member?
As a Grange member, because it was a Grange hall first. Yeah, and I was a member of the Grange when I was a teenager. And we had some of our meetings over here. Some of the names that are still around
the
town.
Mayflower Grange.
Yeah. And then it went from that all the way up to the senior center that it is now. I used to go over there for auctions. They used to have Friday night auctions all the time, which were a lot of fun at one point. So it's evolved into a lot of different things as the years have gone on. It's kind of fun to watch. Now I provide extra parking for them.
Yes, right.
Because I'm right next door, but it's okay.
Well,
Just
it's a
don't
good
block
news,
my car
bad
on the
news.
drive.
The bad news is that sometimes there isn't enough parking, and so they're parked all along the roads there. The good news is a lot of people
are using it.
Which is a great thing to see.
I'm over there usually once a week.
They
have a class, it's called Zengevity. And it's basically, it's kind of an exercise class, but it's also fun and upbeat so that you forget you're exercising. And a lot of walking and movement, and it's a great class if you want to join in.
Well, I was up there for bingo this week, Dottie.
Did you?
I did not see you there.
No, I've never been a bingo person.
No.
Never been a bingo. I should try that sometime.
You should.
We have a bingo expert in the room here, too, running camera
I didn't
for
realize
us.
that. I didn't know Helen was the bingo expert.
Oh, she's the expert. She's been running bingo for years. So we're coming up on the summer months here. Makes me think of recreation. What's our recreation department doing this summer, and where can people find out?
Well, again, the rec department has a website that people can go on off the town page. There's also a rec hotline number that's on the recreation sign by the Nelson Field roads that people can call, and there's always a recording on there of what programs are coming up. The big one is the summer rec program.
Yes, it's always a big
that's
deal.
run every year. In fact, it was one of my first jobs here in Londonderry was being a rec counselor. But it's a popular program, and it's utilized quite a bit, and so it would encourage parents to get their kids involved with that.
That's some good stuff.
If they're able to. And I think there's probably some summer sports camps as well.
Yeah.
And again, if people want to talk to the rec director, Art Salitas, they can email him, give him a phone call.
Yeah.
As I said, it's, the number's on the website, it's on the sign, and people can find about those things through that. I will tell you, there's going to be a lot of events this summer in town, which is exciting. Of course, the concert on the Commons will be coming back.
Yeah, Old
It's
Home
always
Day.
a popular event. Old Home Day in
To
August.
the Old Home Days, we've expanded so
It
much.
is expanded.
It's going to be a week pretty soon.
Yeah. So that's of course is happening. I'm hearing word there's actually going to be a carnival
Oh,
in June to
Okay.
benefit the Boosters Club. I haven't seen any official announcement about it, but I hear the planning is underway for that. And,
Okay.
so I'm sure details will be coming out soon. But that'll so the carnival will be coming to town in June. There's another event. Oh, the Boot Scoop Boogie, second annual Boot Scoop Boogie,
Okay.
which takes place in July. Had a huge turnout for it
I
last
bet,
year.
yeah.
It's an evening event.
Yeah.
It starts with a road race, and then there's a bonfire and vendors and country music. There was a concert last year, all on the rec fields behind Nelson Road, Sergeant Road. So that's happening again in July, and I'm sure there's probably going to be even more people at it this year.
Yeah.
And then the big one is, and I don't have the official date yet, it's still being worked out, but the Jimmy Fund is going to do their first ever walk in New Hampshire, and it's going to be in Londonderry.
Oh, wow, that's
For
great.
people that want to raise money and help the Jimmy Fund that can't make it to the Boston Walk. They're going to be doing one.
Boy, that's been going on for so
It has,
long.
yeah. But they're teaming up with Dana-Farber,
Yeah.
which is located at the Elliott Urgent Care in in town, and so we should be getting the details on that soon, and
It's great.
it'll be another great event.
Yeah,
So a lot going on here this summer.
Sounds good. And a little plug for the Access Center. There are 2 summer camps, the beginners and an advanced, and it's very, very inexpensive. People sometimes look at the price and go, what am I getting for that? But it doesn't cost anything extra for the town to put that on. So here at the Access Center, Erin teaches the classes. The kids love her. They have a great time. Some of them just keep coming back just to come back.
Yeah.
Stop in and say hi and what they're doing. So look at that. That's coming up. And again, contact information for the Access Center is at the end of the program. And we'll have all this contact information there, but always go to londonderrynh.org if you want to know anything. And always call us here at the studio or email me. Again, information at the end. If you want to be on the show, be on one of the other shows that I do, or if you just want to make sure that there's something that gets discussed and put out there, we're happy to do that. We're transparency in government, and we are answerable to you. And the town doesn't seem to have any problem with answering the questions. So
Not at all.
let us know what you need to know, and we'll make sure it happens. And
Well, I'll
Is-
bring one last thing up, Dottie?
absolutely.
Because I've gotten this question a few times lately. So, people want to know,
Okay.
why can't the potholes at the Londonderry Commons Plaza be fixed
By the town.
by the town? And the answer is those aren't town roads.
Yes.
Those are privately owned roads by the plaza owners.
Yeah.
They are terrible. I mean, you really got to, it's like going through a minefield, taking
Well,
your
the truth
car
of the
through
matter
there.
is, those people really don't want us using those as shortcuts because it does wear and tear on their roads they pay for.
Oh, that is true, and
Yeah.
that's part of, by the way, what's being looked at for the traffic mitigation of Woodmont. When right now what's
Make that
planned
connection.
is there's going to be a connection from Pillsbury all the way into the Market Basket Plaza,
Okay.
and which is going to take a huge amount of traffic off of Gilcrest and through that Commons, because
Right.
most people, what they do right now, I'm guilty of it, is they'll go down Gilcrest, turn into Londonderry Commons, and cut through there to go to that 4-way intersection to get into the Market Basket Plaza. So those roads are getting a lot more wear and tear than they would otherwise.
Right.
That being said, there's still a lot of potholes out there. The town can't legally fix those, but I was speaking with a tenant of that plaza recently who told me that, in speaking with the landlords, I guess they do have plans to fill those potholes
Okay.
this spring. So people should be seeing the potholes be filled sooner than later there.
Okay. Well, that sounds good because they are pretty deep. See, I cheat and go through that way too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, people have always had that misunderstanding, though, that they were actually town-owned roads when they are not.
Right.
And I like the concept in some communities where they have a road that runs parallel to their busy commercial road.
Yep.
Because it does split the traffic off.
Right.
But in this case, we're using somebody else's roads, and it
Right.
does impact them.
Yeah.
We should be helping them, I think. So we're the ones that told them they had to have the road, right?
Well, that was
A long time
planned
ago.
a long time before.
I was around. You
Yeah.
were still in school.
I was,
Yeah.
still in school at that time. That's true. I was here, but still in
Yeah.
school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anything else we need to
I think that's
update
it.
people? Okay,
Yeah.
we're ready for your questions. Send them on in. And thank you for watching. We're always glad to bring the information that you need and want. Thank you. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, Dottie.